On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. Vince Coglianese.
Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:07 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up on the program this hour, Susan Crabtree will join us. She's got a brand new book out on the Chi-Coms and their relationship with Gavin Newsom. Greasy Gavin, he hasn't told you about this. We will. And then a Secret Service shooting this weekend. The Secret Service gunning down a man brandishing a weapon outside of the White House. Susan's always got the latest on those reports. And you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Here's some sound for you. This is the sound of America healing. Yeah, they're out there tearing up all the vandalism in what we unfortunately have been referring to as Black Lives Matter Plaza, which was assembled back in 2020 at great taxpayer expense, right in front of the White House, an act of vandalism that didn't help any black lives. By now you should know that many more black people were killed in homicides in the wake of all that hysteria than in years past. Which is quite awful, as police were taken out of communities and fewer people were protected from murder. And also the Black Lives Matter movement, for what it was, turned out to be a gigantic scam that stole a ton of money and enriched only a couple of people at the expense of so many others. It was bad, and it's way past time for us to remove this eyesore right in front of the White House. And the road needs to be completely reopened so you can have the experience, so Americans can have the experience of driving down that street, looking directly at the White House as they do, and saying, isn't it cool to live in a country where I can get this close to the White House, where I can, right there in front of us, through our windshield, we can see it. Let's bring that back. Joining me now, a man who has been on the scene today, the journalist Richiee McGinniss is on the phone. Richiee, good to have you back with us, sir.
Thanks for having me, Vince.
What did it look like down there today?
Looks like a construction zone. They're removing all the pylons first. Presumably, they're going to paint over the BLM's giant yellow letters. For those who haven't been there, it spans 3 blocks, and I don't know what they're going to paint over. I've heard talks of Liberty Plaza, but none of the construction workers down there were quite sure what was next.
Yeah, it seems a little confusing. Yeah, the mayor, Muriel Bowser, seems to be indicating that they want to make it like a 250th anniversary memorial or something. How about no? How about just open up the street, put up thousands of American flags all across our great city, and stop doing street murals? Like, no more of these.
Yeah, and actually Abolish the Police was painted on there for a good portion of the summer, and BLM Plaza was almost a de facto autonomous zone. There were people with tents that they had set up. They were camping out in there. I saw multiple journalists assaulted inside of BLM Plaza. I got pepper sprayed probably half dozen times in there. Fireworks, flashbangs. Lost some of my hearing in BLM Plaza on the patio for PJ Clark. So I think it's a good step for the city to heal from that whole period.
Yeah, and it's meant. I mean, look, I have no objection to the concept that someone who's black has a life that matters. I agree with that violently. I vehemently agree with that. What I do have an objection to is this sort of performance art that was done merely to be a protest piece against President Trump at the time, and has been sustained since. And this is a movement that should not be lionized. This movement led to, quite unfortunately, a lot of death, a lot of destruction, and a lot of theft. And it feels long overdue to remove the vandalism on the street.
Yeah, and I also filmed when they tried to pull down the Jackson statue in Lafayette Park just on the south end of BLM Plaza. And at that time, they erected fences around it to keep the park police out for the time that they were able to attempt to pull it down. And they called it the Black House Autonomous Zone, and actually spray painted on the columns of St. John's Church, BHAZ, for Black House Autonomous Zone.
It is, you were down there in the midst of all of that chaos back in, this was the beginning of June of 2020, right?
That's correct. The Bible photo op was June 1st.
June 1st. So, yeah, the president...
And BLM Plaza was June 6th, I think. It was early June that they actually named it BLM Plaza.
That's right. So it was after all of the violence and destruction that the ransom payment at taxpayer expense was put out by Muriel Bowser in the city. We'll name it Black Lives Matter Plaza. Please stop destroying everything. And as I recall, at that time, Richiee, every business that was on ground level in that area was completely boarded up to try and prevent the people who were apparently being celebrated by Black Lives Matter Plaza from destroying these businesses.
Yep, that's PJ Clark's. We used to have happy hour there when we worked at the Daily Caller, right up the street. And just months later, I was filming a firework blow up at my feet and getting patio furniture thrown over my head, getting billy clubbed by cops. So that's how quickly things changed there.
Things did change really, really quickly. I saw today that the New York Times has a piece up today. Under pressure from Republicans, D.C. begins removal of Black Lives Matter mural. And they describe the timeline. They say the mural was created in June of 2020 at a time when demonstrations over the murder of George Floyd were erupting in cities across the United States. It was painted a few days after federal authorities used chemical spray and smoke grenades to clear protesters near the White House so that Mr. Trump could walk to a historic church and pose for photographs holding a Bible. Now, what the New York Times doesn't tell you today is that back in 2021, they reported that the Interior Department's Inspector General concluded that there was no evidence to support that the park was cleared for President Trump. And that, in fact, the park police had already planned to clear the area before President Trump ever walked over to St. John's.
And despite CNN's headline, they said protesters tear gassed and rubber bulleted so that Trump could have his Bible photo op. Now, they're not allowed to use tear gas or rubber bullets. They use pepper balls, which are like little paintballs, plastic paintballs that have irritant, and pepper spray and smoke grenades. Now, comparing a pepper ball to a rubber bullet is like comparing a pool noodle to a baseball bat. I've been shot by both, and obviously that set the stage for the hyperbolic reporting that continued over the course of the summer and really set the stage for all the chaos that we saw across the country when CNN covered it so ridiculously on June 1st.
Yes, and so from that day until now, this Black Lives Matter Plaza has just been a memorial to all of that chaos, and it's been a part of basically just keeping alive a conspiracy theory. And it's just been really disgusting, and it has not in any way helped the country, which I'm angry about. Hey, Richiee, I also want to ask you about another thing that's happening in D.C. right now. It's not just Black Lives Matter vandalism being cleaned up. It's also the homeless encampments that are being cleaned up in the city. President Trump and Republicans in Congress have told the mayor, you better clean this up or else we're coming in. So she is now. We're seeing images of bulldozers and dump trucks and all of these homeless encampments being taken down. The city finally being cleaned up. In other words, it's always been possible. There was just never will to do it before. What are you seeing out there among the homeless population in D.C.?
Well, I know my boys Ron, Rod, and Rich, who live under an underpass down by the National Mall. I won't name where, but I drove by there the other day. Their stuff was there. They were not, so I didn't get a chance to ask them what the deal is with their location. But that's like primo real estate, and they've been there for 8 years. I would stop by over the last 8 years, and that's their home. So it'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of homeless shelters around DC, and I guess that's where they'll go. But the question is once they clear everything out, usually what happens is people just relocate to the next park. So we'll see if, actually are able to clear everything out. Yeah,
I mean, it has to be done, though. Some of these underpasses along the water on the Potomac River coming into the city, right as you get across the Memorial Bridge, and if you take the Rock Creek, Potomac Parkway area, I've seen homeless people out there just going to the bathroom. It's not even the bathroom. They're just doing their business, squatting on the grass as traffic is driving by. I'm like, well, hey, welcome to the nation's capital. That's how you get welcomed in this city, unfortunately. And it's long past time to clean up that kind of situation.
I call the one under 395 right in Navy Yard. I call it Everest Base Camp because they have like these $1,000 tents and grills and electricity, and it's quite the operation they have there.
Yeah, It's wild. You've seen the city change a lot through the years. Do you think it's possible to get cleaned up and to be healthy again?
I do think so. I mean, if you look at what happened in the 80s, 90s, and then early 2000s, there was a major change that happened in D.C., and the crime was tamped down. So obviously we had almost 1,000 carjackings last year, and that's a real problem now. So that's why I drive a stick shift vehicle, because none of them young kids can drive stick.
I love that. Also, I have to thank you, Richiee. Richee's always coming through in the clutch for me. Richee's been a good friend for a long time. But after they made this announcement about the 12 to 3 shift, I quickly needed some headshots, some photos, and I knew a guy with a camera who is always willing to say yes to everything, and that's Richiee McGinniss. So I called him. I was like, Richiee, would you please take some headshots of me? And what did we do? We went to Union Station, and we took photos together, didn't we? And
yep, we did. I had my eyes closed for most of it, but I hope it turned out all right.
No, it turned out great. But while we were there, and I was with my kid was with us, my 10-year-old daughter, and she was very helpful. She was holding hangers and jackets and stuff so we could quickly do wardrobe changes. But there was a homeless guy who walked straight up next to where my kid is standing, and he starts cursing at a wall, right? He was just cursing at the wall.
Yes. I might have to hire your daughter. She had great courage under pressure there.
He starts cursing in the most foul terms imaginable at a wall, and my little girl is standing there, and I said, "Hey, baby, come over here." And I told her to stand in a different spot. Let's get away from that guy because he's a psychopath. It wasn't like I was going to reason with him or, hey, knock that off. My daughter's standing here. Like, he's a full-blown psychopath. And, we were able to get through all of that, but I was just reminded about how sad I was about the state of Union Station because it wasn't always like that, was it, Richiee? It used to be a lot better and a lot safer.
Yeah, and there were plenty of tents in front of Union Station that are not cleared out, but I have witnessed multiple overdoses in front of that station and called the police and the EMTs. I mean,
I remember.
It's definitely a hangout.
I remember. Yeah, no, there's been some bad stuff there. Anyway, Richiee McGinniss, thank you. You were on the street today. You got to see a lot of the action in the streets of D.C. I always appreciate you, sir. Great to talk to you as always.
Thanks for having me, Vince.
There he is, Richiee McGinniss. Great guy. And he's got a book on his life and all of the riots that he's been to, including some of the ones we were just talking about. It's called Riot Diet by Richiee McGinniss. You should go pick it up. It's cool. $4.19 now.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 on 105.9 WMAL, making sense of the news.
All right, let's go to the phones. I got Mark calling in from Norfolk, Virginia right now, line 2. Hello, Mark. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Again, congratulations.
Thanks, Mark.
Listen, I lived there in D.C. for 16 years, just up until after COVID, and the city had become almost depressed. All the restaurants had closed down for all these stupid orders, and the homeless seemed to have taken over. This cleanup is so past due that it should have been done years ago in order to make D.C. vibrant again.
Yeah.
So hopefully all the restaurants and shops that were downtown will come back, and the vibrancy of that beautiful city, that tourist attraction, our nation's capital, will come roaring back once all this blight is cleaned up.
Yeah, I hope so, too. And, Mark, you got to see what the city looked like before all of the work-from-home stuff was going on, too, of course, being there until COVID. And part of the vibrance of the city is all the life in the city. You know, just having for years, D.C. has talked about how it's primarily in so many ways a commuter city. The city's population explodes during the day because so many people come in from places like Maryland and Virginia into the nation's capital to work. And now that President Trump and company are restoring so much of that, you just get a lot more human life. Yes, there's more traffic, obviously, in that. But there's also a lot more human life. People walking the streets, going to find a nice place to go to lunch. Going when the weather gets nicer, finding a park bench to sit in one of the many great parks in our city. And the more people you have, the higher the probability that some of the homeless stuff gets cleaned up. Some of the blight gets cleaned up around the city because there's just more eyeballs, more people to pick up the phone, more people who are interested in having a city that's functioning and clean and works. So I think all of this kind of conspires to improve outcomes here as President Trump gets people back to work and threatens the city with consequences if they don't clean up. And all of a sudden, you have Muriel Bowser and company jumping to attention. Okay, we'll clean up the homeless. We'll clean up the homeless. And they had this power all along. They just refused to use it. It's kind of like Joe Biden refusing to secure the border. They had this power all along. They just refused to use it. They just actively worked against you. And now President Trump, by virtue of your vote for him, by the blessing of your vote for him, is coming in and going, no, not anymore. Not out in front of the people's White House. Not out in the nation's capital. Not out in front of the Congress. Not out around the United States Supreme Court. Not at Union Station. Not in any of these places. Clean it up. Clean it up. Get rid of the homelessness. Get rid of the vandalism, including the city-sanctioned vandalism right in front of the White House, and bring human life back to the nation's capital. I think all that adds up to getting the city back to some of the high water marks that you may be familiar with, Mark, and I can't wait for that too. I really want that to be the case because it's a great city. I really love D.C. I love D.C. It's a great city. I hate what they've done to it, though. I hate the way the left has just completely wrecked it.
Going down there after work for happy hour.
Yeah.
To take dates out on dinner. I just love that city. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And then they ruined it with all of the blight. But it's going to come back.
Yeah, make D.C. great again. Let's do that. I love that they keep saying, like, we need to be a state. That's the way out of this. No, it's not. No, you ran it into the ground. Now you want to be a state? I don't think so. It's not happening. This is like dealing with your kid. Like, your boy thinks he's entitled to dessert after being a nightmare all day. No dessert for you. What do you think this is? Have you met yourself? There's no way you're getting dessert. Coming up, Susan Crabtree will tell us what's going on with the Secret Service and why greasy Gavin Newsom has so many weird relationships with the Chi-Coms. Hey there, good afternoon to you. It's 4:36 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news on a Monday. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. This weekend, the Secret Service opening fire on an armed man outside the White House who they say was likely suicidal and brandishing a weapon. Here's some reporting on the subject from Sky News.
Breaking news coming from the U.S. now, and the U.S. Secret Service has shot a man near the White House in Washington, D.C. That's according to our colleagues at NBC News in the States. It happened shortly after midnight, after an armed confrontation with law enforcement, according to the Secret Service there. They say local police had reported what they described as a suicidal individual who had possibly travelled to Washington, D.C. from Indiana. They later located a vehicle and spotted a person on foot who matched the description. They then brandished a firearm, the report says, and an armed confrontation ensued, during which shots were fired by Secret Service personnel, they've confirmed. The man was shot and has been taken to hospital. And this all happened on the intersection of 17th Street and F Street Northwest, which is near the White House in Washington, D.C. So just to reiterate, the U.S. Secret Service has shot a man near the White House in Washington, D.C. He has subsequently been taken to hospital.
They say the man is 27 years old, named Andrew Dawson. They believe he was traveling to Washington from Indiana, and that there was a law enforcement bulletin that he wanted to die by suicide by cop. For more on all of this, I want to bring into the program now the great Susan Crabtree, who joins us on the phone. She also has a brand new book out, which we'll get to in just a moment. Susan, good to talk to you as always.
Oh, it's great to talk to you, Vincent, and congratulations on your new gig. Couldn't think of a better person to take over. Not fill Dan Bongino's shoes, but to take over that slot. It's incredible to see someone I love seeing someone who is so deserving get rewarded for their work.
Thank you, Susan. I'm really looking forward to it. We start next week, Monday. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'll have to talk to you there in that venue, too. But, Susan, tell me about the Secret Service and the fact that they had to shoot this man. What do we know at this hour?
Well, I just spoke to the Metropolitan Police because they are the ones, the D.C. police are taking over this case and investigating it. And we know the guy is still alive. His name, as you mentioned, is Andrew Dawson. He's of North Manchester, Indiana. And he was placed under arrest for carrying a pistol without a license, carrying a rifle and a shotgun outside a home or business. And then he also had a BB gun. So, I think that's probably not what they were most concerned about. But this is right where all the reporters and a lot of staffers go in to the White House. This is sort of my normal route when I covered the White House as part of the briefing room for about a decade.
Mm-hmm.
So you park over there and you go right through this area, and there's a Secret Service checkpoint. I think this man was obviously suicidal, and he was alerted. This is actually an example of local law enforcement working successfully with the Secret Service, which is a nice reversal of what we saw from J13 at the Butler rally, when they were both blaming each other, and there was hands pointed in all directions, fingers pointed in all directions, but themselves to actually take responsibility for what happened in Butler. This one looks like they got their man, and now he's facing a host of charges.
Yes.
And yeah.
So here's something that stands out to me in this story that I'm really curious about. How did they know what his intentions were? Because the way all the reporting is going down, it's the Metropolitan Police Department, Metro PD in Washington, shared information with the Secret Service that this man may have been traveling to D.C. from Indiana and that he was anticipating a, quote, suicide by cop. How do they know all of that? I'd like to know, to what extent are they spying on all of our phones and communications in order to establish that fact pattern?
Well, I don't think they have a FISA surveillance warrant on all of us, but you do know that FISA does get abused at times. We do know that now.
Yeah.
But I do think this is local, from what I understand, local Indiana law enforcement communicating up the food chain to D.C. So, like I said, I think it's actually they must have seen something, or somebody reported that he had suicidal thoughts, or there was some kind of social media post. We do not have that information yet.
Right.
But like I said, this is something, an example of, hey, the Secret Service is working with local law enforcement. This is refreshing, to say the least.
Yeah, and there's no reason to believe anything went wrong here in terms of the Secret Service's response. They were doing, it sounds like, exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They anticipate this guy. They're trying to approach him, and he's brandishing a weapon. At that point, any law enforcement officer would try and put down the threat.
Yes, exactly. It's very hairy for them, and they were criticized during the Butler rally for not shooting quickly enough. And what I was getting back then is that they really have to make sure that the person is armed with a real gun. There was I was even told that they like to get the confirmation from their bosses before if they can shoot. Now, other people have said that's not true. They can shoot if they see a gun pointed at the president, but they want to make sure it is a real gun. And certainly in Butler, they did not act quickly enough. And we all know why that was now, after so many congressional investigations and an independent review panel investigation. They had siloed communications, like what we experienced, like on a smaller scale from 9/11. It's siloed communications once again, and hopefully they are solving that problem.
So you say hopefully. I was just about to ask, do you have any sense that they are solving these problems? Obviously, stopping an armed gunman outside the White House is a good start. What do you know about how the Secret Service is changing things under the new director, Sean Curran?
Well, I have had a request in to speak to Sean Curran. He has only done 2 interviews so far, and they were very quick, and they weren't that revealing, to be quite honest. We all saw that wonderful moment of him with DJ Johnson giving the brain cancer survivor, 12 or 13-year-old, an honorary Secret Service agent, making him an honorary Secret Service agent at the State of the Union.
It was touching.
That was lovely. But they have not been forthcoming with me. I have asked them for an interview to talk about their reforms, and they have not granted that interview. I have been critical, as well as Dan Bongino, before he leaves his program. In the last couple of months, we have been critical of both Sean Curran and several agents that were in charge of security at the Butler rally and also at the Florida golf course.
Yeah.
Now, Sean Curran, that was his detail, and he put those people in those positions. Now, we need to know more about it, and I've been asking the questions. I would like to do a positive story on the Secret Service for a change. Why don't you tell me about whether you're going to keep the investigations aside, all the counterfeit money, financial crimes, even child trafficking cases, or whether you're going to give that role back, that duplicative role back to the FBI? Are you going to, because they share it now, they both do the similar types of investigations, and are you going to focus solely on protection? And by the way, is anyone getting fired? Is anyone getting doged at the Secret Service?
Right.
I'm hearing a lot of things about waste and abuse that are going on there, and I'm going to have questions shortly, soon for them on that. But we have not seen anyone fired in the Secret Service and it's 7 months after.
Yeah, and I can see, and I can even guess how some of these like press people in the Secret Service are thinking. They're probably thinking, well, we don't want to reveal any new secret methods and procedures to protect the president. We don't want. You don't have to do that. There's a million. Look, the public has a million questions that need to be answered, and you don't have to give up anything about how you're dramatically improving some sort of new secret way to protect the president. We want you to maintain those secrets, but at the same time, we want you to give us the confidence that you take seriously all of the various problems that led to multiple assassination attempts on a protectee so that they don't happen again. There's a way to do this that'll help restore the public's trust.
Yes, and I broke this on WMAL earlier, I think last week. The Secret Service, their mission assurance report, that's their internal report on the failures at Butler and in the Florida golf course, they classified it. Now, I'm hearing that from multiple sources. Why are they classifying that report? Is it to prevent it from getting to the Office of Inspector General? Is it to prevent it from getting to certain committees in Congress? So although I think the Intelligence Committee could get a copy of that report, why are they classifying that mission assurance report? I've heard it's pretty juicy, better than the investigations we've seen so far more revealing than the congressional committees and that independent review panel. So I think that should get to the IG and to get to Congress for more oversight. There is way more reporting to be done on what happened in Butler, and I have a lot of different things that I'm hoping to explore.
And one other component to this is like that in the end is kind of on Kristi Noem, isn't it? She's the DHS secretary. Secret Service falls under her. Yes, you could kind of hope for the Secret Service director to play ball, but if he doesn't, he's got a boss, and that's Kristi Noem, and she's got a boss. That's President Trump. And so they can all play ball. And I see today that, for instance, FBI Director Kash Patel is apparently, according to Fox, working, quote, aggressively to comply with all of these congressional document requests. And he's sending documents over from the FBI to Congress in advance of the deadlines that people like Congressman Jim Jordan are giving to the FBI. So this is possible to be responsive and transparent in a quick way.
Yes, it seems like the Secret Service has been somewhat protected from, like I said, from DOJ, from any type of scrutiny so far, at least publicly. But I'm told, last week, Donald Trump said he has a report that's coming to him. There is a report. He didn't specify which agency. I believe it's probably the FBI, but Kash Patel has just getting in there. So let's see who provides the most information to him. The report on the assassination attempts. The would-be assassins have all these bizarre things going on with them, with their multiple encrypted apps and foreign apps, and the other one, Ryan Ruth, having multiple cell phones on him, and he tried to serve in the Ukrainian army, all kinds of bizarre ties. So we still need answers, and Donald Trump said he's going to be demanding them. Whether he's going to be making that public or not is a real question I still have.
That's critical, and I hope he errs on the side of transparency, which he's done for so many other issues. Let me shift gears to your book. You've got a brand new book out, which I love. You've co-authored it with Jed McFadder. That title of the book is Fool's Gold: The Radicals, Con Artists, and Traitors Who Killed the California Dream and Now Threaten Us All. And you take a special look at Gavin Newsom, the current governor of California, who's looking to start a big podcast career right now, and his connections to the Chinese Communist Party. which I think this is a pretty important topic, given that I'm seeing a lot of Democrats thinking that Gavin Newsom is the future in the country, the next president, perhaps. What should we know about Gavin Newsom?
Well, Gavin Newsom has you all are familiar with the way he cleaned up San Francisco for Chinese President Xi's visit at the APEC summit about a year ago or so. And then he miraculously cleaned it up. No homelessness on the street, no fentanyl shooting up. Then you saw you also probably familiar with his glamour photo ops on the Great Wall of China when he visited Xi personally. That may be well padded territory, but what we go into is that he started when he was a lieutenant governor, started a nonprofit called China SF, and we were wondering, why did one of his vineyards have a big Chinese shipping box with all the Chinese language on it in one of his vineyard mixology areas inside. And we started looking into it. So he started this group, China SF, when he was lieutenant governor, and it's responsible for bringing in more than 100 Chinese companies entree into California. And what they did with this is, you would probably guess, right? It's not so much going the other way. There's not a lot of U.S. companies getting into San Francisco or California companies getting into China, except, of course, Newsom did trademark his wines into China and actually had some ties to this business developer that we uncovered named Vincent Lo. He has deep ties to the CCP, the top Chinese government officials, and even Newsom poured wine for a lot of CCP officials and Vincent Lo at one of his buildings in Shanghai during a visit. So he's bringing in all these companies to California and undercutting the market because they're subsidized. Like when you're talking about SunTech and solar panels, they're subsidized by the Chinese government. So in fact, we all made fun of Solyndra at the time when it went under, even though it got Obama subsidies, clean energy subsidies, to the tune of I think 500,000. Well, SunTech, the Chinese government company that Newsom invited into California, was undercutting them the whole time, and then that company fell apart because they had false loans in Italy. Yeah. So the whole thing fell apart, and they were on the New York Stock Exchange, and actually U.S. investors were fleeced. They end up holding the bag. So is this good? This is just one example. We have numerous in the book. So I would invite your readers to buy it, and we also have an excerpt on foxnews.com that goes into this in great detail. But what do you think that was all about? Was it personal, his trying to get entree in his wine business into China, or was it really trying to help out the American consumers and the California consumers? Yeah, right. Yeah, it's China establishing another foothold in the United States and using one of its most prominent politicians now to do it. And so, yes, he sold out America for Chinese influence, and people deserve to know about this as this guy wants to take a run clearly at the White House. Thank you for exposing it. Susan Crabtree, always digging in, always sharing this important news. Good to talk to you today. Absolutely, Vince. Thanks so much for your interest. Take care. Susan Crabtree. The book is Fool's Gold. It's $4.53 now. WMAL, traffic and weather. Michelle Murray is in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center. Kamala Harris is babbling in public again. I'd like to make fun of her, so we'll do it next on The Vince Coglianese Show.